I'm Marty Stouffer. Have you ever walked in the woods and seen a hole high up in a tree? Chances are that even though a small mammal or another bird lives in it now, a woodpecker originally drilled it. The ancients believed these birds were gods that could bring forth rain by tapping their bills. Today, we know they can't perform miracles, and when we do think of woodpeckers, the cartoon character Woody immediately comes to mind. But, age-old deity or modern comic, one thing is clear. These birds know how to use their heads. Their skulls are toughened to withstand the shock of constant forceful pounding as they whack away at wood in search of a meal or a home. With all their pecking and drumming, woodpeckers are most often heard rather than seen, and when we do see them, they're seldom more than a disappearing black and white streak. Their family also includes flickers and sapsuckers and totals between 23 and 45 species and subspecies, depending on who you talk to. All are adapted to a life on tree trunks and in branches. So come with me now, and let's take a look at the fascinating lives of the woodpeckers, nature's hammerheads. A woodpecker's life is shaped and framed by wood. The downy, with its soft plumage and chisel-shaped bill, is typical. America's smallest member of the family. It's also the most widespread, found in open woodlands from Maine to California. Familiar and friendly, the downy seems almost tame as it flits through the branches, searching for insects. Downies often keep the same mate for several seasons. The male, with his scarlet fringe, and the plainer female take turns carrying food to the nest hole, where they raise 2 to 5 young each year. Both sexes are equally hard-headed, sharing the work of digging the nest and keeping it clean. Flying wood chips form a rough bed at the base of the nest, where the eggs are laid and the babies grow up, literally and quite comfortably, surrounded by wood. A tuft of hairs around its nostrils protects the downy from inhaling the sawdust it creates. Another remarkable feature of woodpeckers in general is the way their feet are adapted to an arboreal lifestyle. Short legs with strong, sharp-clawed toes, two pointing forward and two backward, provide a good grip. A woodpecker's tail is also superbly constructed to support its climbing way of life. Stiff tail feathers prop the bird as it hammers its way up or around a tree. This downy's neighbor and close cousin is a red-shafted flicker, whose favorite food is ants. It's often found feeding on the ground, though it too prefers to nest in tree holes. Like all woodpeckers, the flicker has an extremely long, barbed tongue with which it laps up various bugs. Although flickers and downies don't really compete, the feisty little downy seems to enjoy dive bombing his larger cousins, just for the fun of it. Most of the time, though, they get along fine. Our eastern forests are prime habitat for the largest woodpecker known to remain in this country, the pileated. This industrious bird leaves practically no stump unturned in its hunt for insects. Exceptionally strong neck muscles cushion the impact of powerful blows. This slow, rhythmic whacking often means that valuable timber is being methodically cleaned of destructive carpenter ants, the pileated's favorite food. Woodpeckers differ from songbirds, like this black and white warbler, mainly in the shape of their feet. But few woodpeckers are known for their song. Once common, the pileated is now seldom seen, so I consider myself lucky to find this pair actually mating. As with most woodpeckers, this male pileated shares parental duties with his mate. The young grow quickly, fed on a diet of pre-digested insects, regurgitated into their throats with no less force, it seems, than was used by the parents to dig them out of the tree. But the babies are not only uninjured, they're eager for more. Although the sexes look similar, the male pileated sports a red cheek patch and a larger red top knot. Midwestern areas, like this Indiana bog, are a favorite haunt of America's best known and perhaps best loved member of the family, the red-headed woodpecker. This bird is remarkable for the variety of its diet. Fruits and grains are consumed, as well as many kinds of insects, and not even a hickory nut is too tough to crack. The male and female are identical, and both sexes drum with their bills. To attract each other to nesting sites, and to defend their surrounding treetop territories. Trees are all important to woodpeckers, a source of water as well as food and shelter. No other bird lives so intimately with and within wood, or contributes so much to the welfare of our forests. Woodpeckers are preyed upon by hawks, owls, snakes, even rodents. And one study showed that more red-headed woodpeckers are killed by cars than are any other species of bird. Besides man, the greatest threat has been the introduction in the 1900s of the European starling. This intruder has significantly reduced woodpecker numbers by driving them from their nest holes and destroying their eggs and young. Within the continental United States, California boasts the highest mountain, the lowest desert, the oldest and tallest trees, and some of the best birding in the country. It hosts an amazing diversity of woodpecker life. This handsome fellow is a Lewis's woodpecker, first described by Lewis and Clark in 1806. Typically, the Lewis's feeds on insects, but it's also fond of the berries and currants which grow in the ponderosa pine forests that are its preferred feeding ground. The Lewis's has some interesting habits that are most un-woodpecker-like. For one thing, instead of digging its own nest, it occupies the deserted cavities of other members of its tribe. And instead of boring deep into trees for grubs, it probes natural crevices in the surface of the bark. Even more unwoodpeckerly, it sails the air like a flycatcher, grabbing many of its meals on the wing. But it proves itself a true woodpecker in caring for its young. A California neighbor of the Lewis's, the white-headed woodpecker, is as strikingly marked as any member of its family. The male is distinguished by a red slash on the back of its white head. Though their favorite food is ponderosa pine seeds, white-headed woodpeckers also devour the eggs, larvae, and adults of many destructive insects, and feed them to their young. Another fascinating California resident, found mainly along coastal regions, is the red-breasted sapsucker. Now, sapsuckers are woodpeckers whose name and food supply both come from the neatly chiseled pits they drill in trees. This Williamson sapsucker is a close relative of the red-breasted. Though their feeding habits are similar, the Williamsons prefers to nest inland in the giant snags of ancient mountain trees. The female Williamsons look so unlike the male that they were once thought to be two separate species. But the young ones always know who Mom is. For the red-breasted, as for many others of its kind, a strong and clever bill provides many bonuses. Its menu includes sap that collects in the wells that it drills, plus the ants that are drawn to the sticky fluid. It also eats the tender inner layer of exposed cambium bark. These sap wells also benefit others, such as this calliope hummingbird. Like most woodpeckers, sapsuckers are not especially shy and will visit your backyard for the treat of a juicy apple. Woodpeckers of one kind or another are found all over the country, even in areas where wood is as hard to come by as rainwater. In the saguaro desert of Arizona, this female Gila woodpecker is gathering insects and nectar from ocotillo blossoms, while her red-capped mate stores seeds in holes punched into the giant saguaro cactus. Literal-minded people might say that the Gila can't be a true woodpecker in a land where there's so little wood. But since it pecks at the closest available substitute, we might argue that it would peck wood if it could, and therefore is a true woodpecker at heart. Another desert dweller is the ladder-backed woodpecker, which sometimes drills nesting holes into the hollow stems of the giant agave or century plant. This is a risky location at best, liable to be blown down by a strong wind. Most woodpeckers, like this rarely seen black-backed woodpecker of our northern states, prefer more solid nesting sites to which they can return year after year. The black-backed has only 3 toes instead of 4 and is the only woodpecker of which neither sex has a single red feather. One of the most elegant and graceful-looking members of the family is the golden-fronted woodpecker, a native of Texas. But looks aren't everything, and like many woodpeckers, the golden-fronted can be brash and noisy. Wooded hills and thickly timbered bottomlands from Oklahoma and Texas eastward are home to a close cousin of the golden-fronted, the red-bellied woodpecker. This bird seems misnamed, for the red heads of both sexes are far more conspicuous than their pale bellies. Another southeastern native is the red-cockaded woodpecker. This highly social little bird is on the endangered list due to its special nesting requirements, which are incompatible with timber interests here in Mississippi. The red-cockaded bores through living sapwood into the rotten heartwood of aging pines. The exuded resin repels predators, especially tree-climbing snakes, which might otherwise raid the nest. We're back in California now, where there are more kinds of woodpeckers than any other state. Most, like this red-shafted flicker greeting the sun's first warmth, are common enough in other parts of the country or in neighboring states. But an astonishing number seem to thrive best in the rolling live oak foothills of the Sierras. Of this avian array, none is more intriguing in its behavior than the acorn woodpecker. Unlike most woodpeckers, it lives in groups or colonies of a dozen or so birds. And while a few other woodpeckers do store food, for the acorn woodpecker, hoarding is big business. It's a cooperative venture, with each member of the clan getting into the act. While this male hacks out a hole in the colony's storage tree or granary, one of his fellow clansmen gathers an acorn to fill it. Flying with the undulating up and down motion typical of woodpeckers. What's not typical is the strong instinct for community. The entire colony works together, some preparing holes, some gathering the mast of acorns and nuts, and still others guarding the granary tree and its surrounding territory from intruders. Not content to stuff only the trunk, these acrobats hang upside down to pack the branches too. In spring and summer, the birds live on insects, sap, and nectar, but working side by side through the fall, a colony stocks its granary tree with winter survival rations. Guarded and used by the colony over many generations, a single granary may contain as many as 50,000 storage holes. Group activities are usually harmonious, but not always. The stored acorns are carefully tended and turned to prevent rotting. In spring, what's left of the crop is used to feed the young, which are hatched in a communal nest and raised by the group as a whole. The fledglings are often awkward at first, but soon they are learning all the tricks of the woodpecker trade. Some of these tricks can be destructive as far as man is concerned, such as when an overachieving acorn woodpecker bores right through a utility pole. But for the most part, all woodpeckers are highly beneficial, and their hammer-headed lifestyle helps other animals and birds as well. The kestrel, for instance, raises its young in deserted woodpecker holes, as do others. And so it's only right that all woodpeckers are protected by law. They're an essential part of any healthy woodland. More successfully than any other bird, they've adapted to life in the trees. They deserve every chance now to adapt to man, and to have us adapt to them. Now that you know more about woodpeckers, you may want to try attracting some to your backyard. Your help in the way of food and shelter can go a long way in ensuring that these birds survive. For food, put out suet. You can use a contraption like this. This is sort of the designer model, or all you really need is a wire basket. Get some suet from your butcher and stuff it in and hang it on a tree in your yard. Winter is when the birds will visit the most often. For summer, build a nest box. The size of the box itself and of the entrance hole is important because you need a larger box for a flicker, for example, and then a smaller box for a small woodpecker like a downy. In the past, people didn't always think so kindly of woodpeckers. Today, we realize that their habits are more helpful than harmful. So set out some suet or build a nest box. Then you too can enjoy the woodpeckers, nature's hammerheads. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Come along with me as we explore the fun-filled world of kids and critters. Winter reluctantly gives way to spring in the Rockies. By early June, inquisitive newborns embark on journeys as exciting and dangerous as any they'll ever encounter. eventual adversaries are, for a while, frolicsome friends. Nearby, humans cluster in the place we call home, Aspen, Colorado. On the last day of school, the playground is full of energy and anticipation. Summer is just ahead. For our two children, Hannah and Luke, this summer will be one to remember. School is out, but different kinds of lessons are waiting to be learned.
Are you happy school's up?
Yeah.
Me too.
Look, you're doing kids in life.
Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah, that's funny. What are we gonna do tomorrow?
I don't know. Look.
Could we take them home?
No, remember what Dad said? Can't take wild animals home.
But he isn't.
Yeah, he is. He's a wild animal. We can't take him home, okay?
Big ones are, and little ones aren't.
No, but we can't take anything home unless we buy it, okay?
Let's buy it.
No. You hear him? Hear him when he's doing that?
So, maybe going for his mother.
Yeah, maybe he wants his mom. Look at the butterfly over there. Come on.
At age 10, Hannah's curiosity about the natural world is still as keen as when she was a baby. Her understanding of the dangers and excitement of living wild grew out of instinct and experience.
What are we going to do tomorrow?
Huh? Maybe go fishing.
Yeah.
Our son, Luke, at age 4, is rambunctious and eager for adventure.
No, those aren't honeysuckles.
Yes,
Honeysuckles are red.
and blue.
Look at the tree. It fell down.
Look, a hole.
Birdie. Baby bird.
Maybe we're down field.
Yeah. I think he's like a little hawk.
Oh, I do too.
You do too? I wonder if the parents are around.
Their discovery presents a dilemma. Hannah understands that baby animals are taken from the wild only under extreme conditions.
What do you think Dad will want us to do with them?
I don't know.
Could downy chicks so near the ground survive predation?
Mom! 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 Mom!
Hi, kids.
Mom, look what we found.
What, honey?
Guess what?
What
Maybe
are
like
these?
hawks or
Can
something.
take one out of here?
Yeah.
Where'd you find these, kids?
Over in the woods.
Just on the ground?
No, they were in a tree that broke.
Where was the mother?
We think we saw her above us.
Well, they certainly are cute, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're so little. I don't know if I've ever seen a baby bird like this before. Let's go put them on the table and ask Dad.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to be very careful with them because they're...
So what's all the
Probably so
excitement? Oh my
scared.
gosh. What did you find now? What are you bringing home now?
I think they're baby hawks.
Aren't they cute? Where'd you get these?
Over in the woods, in a broken tree.
In a broken tree? Well, let me see. I think I know what they are. Look at their beak. You see right on the end of their beak? You see that little notch? Hawks and eagles and owls don't have that notch. The only thing that has that notch is a falcon. So these are little falcons, but they're kestrels. They're the smallest falcon. See, can you see the notch I'm talking about?
Why is it that they have a notch in their beak?
Well, a falcon kills with its beak. It'll grab and then break a mouse's neck, or it'll a little lizard or a mouse or a bird, whatever it catches. Falcon reaches down and breaks the neck with its beak. Where a hawk, see these feet? These guys have big feet, but you see the claws, they're not as big and sharp and powerful as the hawk. So the falcon will hold prey with its feet, but it kills them with its beak, and that's what that little notch is for. You like these guys? I think they like you. Look.
Dad, could we keep them?
Could we?
We'll find out. Have to call our game warden and make sure. But you know we can't keep them for a long time.
Or we keep them when they get big.
Yeah, when they're big, then we have to turn them loose, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. We have to teach them to hunt, too.
yeah.
Right? Right, yeah. I understand. Sure. Well, I'll get the paperwork in the mail tomorrow. Okay, well, good. That's great. Good. Okay, thanks. Well, we'll let you know how it turns out. I will. Thanks. You too. Okay, bye.
Well, Dad, do we get to keep them?
For a while. We can keep them and train them, and then we turn them loose. Okay? Okay, this is a dead bird that I had in the freezer. You see, it's too big. They can't eat it. So what the mother bird does is she reaches down and she tears off little pieces of it. See? Tears off little chunks. And here's the funniest part of all. Not only do they also eat the meat, they also need to eat feathers. And not only do they also need to eat feathers, they need to eat pieces of bone. Because if they don't eat feathers and bone, then they won't have the calcium. They won't have the things that they need. See this little thing? This is a pellet. Now they cough these up every day after they've eaten bones or feathers. This is how they cleanse their digestive system.
How big do you think they'll get?
Oh, you know, they're maybe half grown. And they'll look a lot bigger when their feathers get long. See, this is just their down. And see, can you see these feathers starting? See all those little things? All those are going to grow out into feathers and then open up like a flower. They open up, they blossom open.
Do you know if they're a boy or a girl?
Well, we can't tell yet. This one might be a girl because she's a little bigger. The females of birds of prey are larger than the males. The chicks are about 2 weeks old. Already, the little birds have learned that their parents were falcons, not humans. This phenomenon is called imprinting. Within a week, adult plumage begins to replace the down, and we can easily tell the female from the male. Hannah attached herself to the larger female, and Luke became a foster parent to the gray-winged male.
Oh, he was hungry. So just hold it there and he'll pick it up.
There's a rule of thumb. The smaller the bird, the faster the growth rate. And it proved to be true. Our falcons are growing much faster than larger birds of prey.
Brown,
And?
white,
And?
black.
Yeah. And what about these little baby fuzzies?
White.
Yeah, these are really baby.
The kestrels had created quite a stir, but nothing like the raucous boarders we took in for several weeks around the 4th of July. 2 orphaned baby river otters and a young Canada goose share our home until they're old enough to be released into the wild.
What are you doing? I'm supposed to be feeding them.
One exceptionally hot afternoon, the pushy goose decides that water should be the exclusive domain of waterfowl. Ultimately, the aggressive honker claims sole possession of the plastic pool, for the time being. It's easy to get attached to some of nature's cuddliest critters. By mid-July, Hannah, Luke, and the kestrels are ready for their maiden voyage. The birds' feathers are hard. It's time to test their wings. And so the Stouffer flight crew prepares for takeoff, using falconry techniques developed thousands of years ago in the courts of Eastern potentate.
Right up here. Go right up here.
Birds of prey were used for hunting and for entertaining nobility. In fact, falconry was the most popular sport in 16th century England.
With this line is called a creance. With this line, the bird won't be able to fly away. We just want to try it one time, okay? To make sure. So come right over here with me. Right over here. Put this little piece of meat on it, right there. Okay, let's get a little closer. Okay. See, it won't be able to fly away now that I'm holding this line. Let it see the meat. See the meat. Well, he definitely wants to come to us. He doesn't want to fly away. So what that means is we can take this line off. We can take this line off and fly him without the line, okay?
Ironically, methods invented by humans to keep birds under control might eventually lead to freedom for our little falcons.
Let's put her right here on the same limb. Right here. Okay. Okay. What? Uh-oh. Ouch, he's on your arm. No, we have to keep him on the glove, or he'll scratch you, see? He'll scratch your arm if he's not on this glove. Now hold it right there, okay? You can hold him while Hannah and I fly her bird, all right? The female bird, okay? You'll be fine, just hold him right there so he can't fly off. You got him. Okay, now move back slow. Move back about 6 or 8 feet. Okay. Move back slow. The meat covered up. Okay. Now you hold up the glove and you can show her the meat. Okay. Whistle. Whistle. Great. Oh, that's great. You see, now what we'll do is we'll just practice flying her farther and farther, her, and Luke's male, and strengthening their wings. You see, the farther we fly them, you need to hold on to the meat. See, because if she flies away with the meat, she won't come back. Can you see why she comes to us? She comes to us just for the meat. And so we'll practice flying her farther and farther. Ouch, ouch. That's what the glove is for. Okay, hold that down in there. Hide it down in there.
I don't have it.
Hide it. Okay, have you got it now? Okay, okay. And we'll practice flying her farther and farther, and then finally she'll learn how to hunt. And then we'll turn her loose. Okay, and just hold that meat down in there so she can't get it all. You see? See there? Now see what happens if you give her all the meat?
She'll fly away.
She flies away, she's gone. She says, forget you, sucker. I got what I wanted. Okay, so let's hold her Jess right here. Up. You want to call him back down out of the tree? Here, come here by me. Let's put a little piece of meat on your glove. Okay, now do you know how to whistle for him? All right. Hold up your glove. Good work. Good work.
With each passing day, the birds are growing stronger, and the children more confident of their ability to train them. Our kestrels begin to exhibit the flying skills for which falcons are famous. Flying to a glove for food is easy compared to catching prey. The birds need to make the transition, but can they? The word raptor means to snatch or seize, as with talons. Hannah's female chose a crystal clear summer morning to prove she is a raptor. Luke's male had caught nothing until just after dawn one day at the end of July. A good place to find a mouse was always under our Springer Spaniel's dog bed, where crunched up food slipped into cracks and crevices. Luke whistles softly, and the male swoops in. Life's lessons may not always be pretty, but I believe they're the best teachers. The kestrel is the most common bird of prey in North America. It's found in nearly every type of habitat. Two birds, more or less, may not seem critical, but to us, these two are very important.
You know the little leather things on their feet
Yeah.
that you hold on to?
Yeah.
Well, see, we can't turn them loose into the wild with those dangling down because it might make it a little harder. See? So we'll cut those off. Then they'll be ready to go.
The odds do not favor survival. Over 50% of young kestrels will die by year's end.
Look, he wants to say goodbye to you, Luke, your friend. He's really become a friend of yours, hasn't he? But he'll make other friends, don't you think? And they'll have fun catching butterflies and mice and
dead birds.
dead birds, sure, I guess. Yeah.
But you know what? They won't catch dead birds. They'll catch live birds. They have to kill them to eat them.
I'm not sure if Luke understands the consequences of letting the falcons go, but Hannah knows all too well the ultimate price that might be paid for freedom.
She'll be fine, don't you think? I think so.
They're back.
Okay, now we have to be careful when we cut these off, because I could cut the bird by mistake. Okay. Right here. Have to stick this right in there. Snip that right there. Now that one's off. Okay. Now. Come here. Come here. One more. One more. One more. Now he's free. He'll fly away. When he flies away this time, he's not going to come back.
Just let him fly. He wants to.
No more Jesses. No more Jesses.
More.
See, look. See, he doesn't even know that he's free yet. He thinks we're going to feed him. You need to tell him he has to go hunt. What's he going to hunt?
Maybe fish.
I don't think he'll catch fish.
Maybe little butterflies?
Whoa.
Why don't you tell him to go hunt some mice and some birds?
The male flies to the ponderosa pine on the edge of the yard. The female watches and seems frantic to join him.
Oh. Oh.
Yet as I cut her jesses, she goes to Hannah one last time.
Bye. There she goes, Hannah. There she goes. See her?
That's the girl.
Yep.
They're both still flying around. Pretty soon, though, they'll realize that we're not going to give them any more food,
But
and then
sometimes
they'll fly away to hunt on their own.
they won't have any dessert.
No dessert?
Won't have any dessert?
Kestrels don't eat dessert. You know, for a kestrel, a butterfly is dessert. Even if you gave a kestrel a popsicle, it wouldn't want to eat it.
Almost without our noticing, summer had slipped quietly into fall. School had begun for Hannah and Luke. I keep an eye on the kestrels as they hunt in a dry stream bed. Grasshoppers are plentiful, and the two have no trouble catching them. Each falcon can eat dozens in one day. When we poison grasshoppers, as we sometimes do, we also destroy these magnificent and beneficial hunters. Birds are the kestrel's most elusive quarry, difficult to catch, but a necessary source of food in the dead of winter. In early autumn, I watched the male at the edge of the lawn, swooping down on house sparrows. One miss after another, until he finally lives up to his nickname of Sparrowhawk. Birds have always held a special fascination for me. I often dreamed of flying as a child, but here I stand, earthbound, still dreaming of what it must be like to fly free. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Wild animals have evolved a wide range of survival tactics. They must eat, and they must keep from being eaten. For predators, speed or stealth is essential, and it helps to have special equipment, sharp fangs or talons to catch and hold prey. But nature is not all tooth and claw. Many animals have survived by being slow and steady, and by having some unique feature that protects them from enemies. Porcupines may not seem very fast or alert, but they don't need to be. For countless generations, they've gone about their business secure in the instinctive knowledge that few creatures will threaten them, and those not for long. Many others have also developed strange and remarkably successful strategies for dealing with predators. Such methods don't help the animal to gather food, but they do keep it from being fed upon. Let's take a closer look at these designs for defense. Nature's odds seem stacked in favor of the predator. It often has a choice of prey, whereas the only choice its prey has, if it's lucky, is self-defense. Like other animals, the opossum's first option is to try to hide. But given the coyote's sense of smell, this tactic is of little use, especially since the opossum can't run fast enough to hide very far away. Just as the second coyote senses that a meal is at hand, her mate appears to have lost his appetite. Most predators need the stimulation of resistance to incite them to kill, and the act of killing to induce them to eat. An inert body inspires little interest. But the possum is still breathing, and in fact, it's only playing dead, playing possum. Biding time until the threat of danger is past. It's not just consciously putting on a good act, however. It actually goes into a state similar to shock, a condition known as thanatosis. The coyotes are fooled into searching for livelier prey, while gradually, as it senses that the coast is clear, the opossum comes out of its trance and goes about its steady, deliberate way. The hognose snake has the advantage of a passive, built-in defense called mimicry, which means that its markings resemble those of a more dangerous creature, its dreaded cousin, the rattlesnake. It capitalizes on this similarity by hissing and striking out. It can also inflate its body to larger than normal size, for which it's nicknamed the puff adder. But these acts of bluff backfire, for the snake has no fangs with which to back them up. Instead, its sudden movements make the badger all the more aggressive. An important part of the snake's defense strategy is to protect its most vulnerable part, its head, by tucking it under its coils. Only when the snake holds still does the badger seem to lose interest. Perhaps this is a cue for the hognose to try the last special effect in its bag of tricks. It, too, plays possum. The badger seems genuinely frustrated, but will this ruse really work? Unlike the opossum, which curls up in a ball to safeguard its stomach, the hognose feigns death belly up, protecting its head in the center of its coils. Animals that play dead often smell dead. The badger turns away in disgust. Perhaps the hognose snake and the opossum, even more than the cat, should be known as creatures that have 9 lives. The Arizona coral snake exemplifies the defense phenomenon known as aposematism, in which bright coloration warns a predator that potential prey is poisonous or otherwise unpleasant to eat. This grasshopper mouse may not look like much of a predator, but it's fiercely carnivorous, a match for tarantulas, scorpions, and sometimes even coral snakes. Instead of playing dead like the hognose snake, the coral snake relies on bluff, thrashing its body to confuse and distract its attacker. The The coral snake is poisonous, but unlike the other poisonous snakes of North America, it has no hypodermic fangs with which to inject its toxin. It must fasten its short teeth into a victim and chew in order to release venom. Perhaps this is why it seems reluctant to bite. A lifetime is necessary to learn which defense tactics work best in which situations, and a lifetime in the wild is often very short. Though bluff will often repel an enemy, it has little effect on this tiger among mice. But as the battle grows more intense, at least this action does prevent the mouse from getting a firm grip on the snake. The coral snake succeeds in escaping temporarily, and the conflict comes to a standstill as the tired mouse goes off to find a more rewarding way to make a living. Camouflage coloring is a primary defense of the banded gecko. Survival depends in part on blending with the sandy soil of Arizona, where it's found. But camouflage is no defense against the mouse's sense of smell. The gecko's survival depends more on instinctive behavior than on inherent coloration, and behavior calls first for escape. That is, if escape is possible from a creature as persistent as the grasshopper mouse. The gecko's tail looks appetizing and is much easier to get hold of than was the coral snake. But with lizards, such as the gecko, the tail serves to draw attention away from more vital parts, and the tail is expendable. In fact, it is programmed to break off at a certain weak point. This contest has two winners. The gecko will live to regenerate a new tail, while the mouse is finally rewarded with a bit of dinner. On the wind-swept plains of eastern Colorado, there's little in the way of shelter or cover. Like the banded gecko, many creatures here depend on camouflage for protection. The color pattern of this sharp-tailed grouse mimics an eye-blurring blend of thin snow and native rock. The grouse's plumage serves as an adaptive defense, not only against predators, but against the environment itself, a form of protection that all living creatures need. Densely overlapping feathers keep the bird warm. The hairy wisps on its feet act as snowshoes, and the scaly combs, which it grows on its toes in winter, function as tire chains to help it travel quickly over ice and snow. Among the many threats to these prairie birds, one of the swiftest and most deadly is the gyr falcon. When this keen-eyed predator takes to the air, the defense system of every small creature for miles around is immediately on the alert. Instinctive behavior is crucial. To remain undetected, a camouflaged creature must be on the right colored background, and it must keep still. From high in the air, the gyr falcon watches for the slightest movement below. One sharp-tailed grouse nestles down, almost motionless. But for its companion, panic proves fatal. Behavior plays an extremely important role in defense, especially in higher animals. Nature issues the basic equipment, camouflage for instance, but survival ultimately depends on how the individual creature responds to danger. Good luck helps, but constant alertness and a cool head are essential. It's not the predator that's favored by nature, but the qualities of wise instinct and experience. Among lower forms of life, behavior is less critical. Each of these caterpillars, with their false eye spots and cryptic colors, their bristling spines and unappetizing shapes, can be found within a single forest in Ohio, evidence of nature's infinite variation. Like them, this white tussock moth caterpillar is a walking, wriggling advertisement that predators should dine elsewhere. It comes equipped with sharp spines that can severely irritate or puncture internal membranes. These bristles are obviously unpleasant to the tree frog. Yet, what predator can withstand repeated temptation? This defense fails both prey and predator. The frog ate the caterpillar anyway, then later died. Nature is not always perfect. Evolution is always in a state of flux, which makes a foolproof defense system impossible. Better designs for defense simply create better predators. But one design that comes close to working consistently is the porcupine's armor of super bristles. A baby porcupine is armed at birth with more than 30,000 of these needle-sharp quills covering most of the upper parts of its body. No wonder mother and baby can go about their foraging so placidly. Few predators have learned how to get around these quills. Each quill is controlled by a single muscle. When the porcupine is at ease, the quills lie hidden among long, sensitive guard hairs, but a disturbed animal can erect them at will. Under the microscope, the quills are seen to be modified hairs. Their tips are covered with tiny, backward-curving barbs, and with a waxy substance that may aid penetration. From tail to head, this mild-mannered creature is a completely armored pincushion. Pity the unsuspecting animal that stumbles into it. The instant the guard hairs are touched, the porcupine reacts by swatting its tail. A porcupine cannot throw its quills, but they're so loosely embedded in the skin that innocent bystanders, as well as nosy intruders, may suffer the consequences. The raccoon, with its clever forepaws, has an easier time than most. It can remove the quills. But other animals are not so lucky. They may starve, unable to eat with a mouthful of quills, or they may die as a quill works its way into a vital organ. Yet it's interesting that the quills contain an antibiotic substance that seems to prevent infection where they penetrate. In evolving this elaborate and specialized defense system, the porcupine has easily compensated for its slowness and lack of cunning. I was exploring one day in early spring when I spotted what turned out to be a recently shed mule deer antler. In fact, it was so freshly shed that it was still moist with blood. I thought the buck that had dropped it must be somewhere nearby. I found him grazing on early spring grass, already taking in the nutrients he would need to grow a new set of antlers. The fresh socket was still red and wet. The other socket was dry. Antlers are often shed several days apart. In a few weeks, these sockets will be covered with a layer of fuzzy velvet, which will then begin to bulge and grow. During the next few months, I returned several times and filmed the regrowth of his antlers. The rounded button stage of spring develops at an incredible rate. This velvet is one of the fastest growing tissues known and has even been studied in relation to human cancer, a disease which also has fast growing cells. Maybe someday a deer's antlers will help us to save lives. Soon, the velvety spikes of summer will fork into the gleaming tines he polishes in preparation for autumn's battles. The word defense has many meanings and applies within a species as well as between species. The buck's limp tells me that he's already been hard at work defending his territory and harem, not against predators, against rivals. But there's no rest for the weary. A larger buck with larger antlers hangs out on the edge of the herd, presenting a constant challenge. Once again, a fight is inevitable. And once and for all, the smaller buck seems determined to evict the intruder. Someday, this young buck will have to face the same challenge. Nature's lesson is that bigger is not necessarily better. What counts is the spirit and determination to fight and to survive. Some animals wear their protection almost passively, as an automatic life insurance policy they hardly even need to think about. Others must choose how far to carry their threat displays before resorting to more extreme tactics. None of these creatures has developed the deadly weapons or complex intelligence that we associate with their more highly developed predators. But all of them have been around for hundreds of thousands of years and will no doubt continue for many more, adding to nature's variety with their unique designs for defense. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. The whitebark pine is a fascinating example of an evergreen tree's ability to survive almost anywhere. When ancient forests retreated, the whitebark was left stranded on high mountain slopes, where violent wind and the sterile ground made it difficult for any tree to grow. It's mid-September, and inside these sticky, sap-covered cones, the seeds are ripe, ready for harvest by a whole variety of wildlife species. This tree is able to cling to a meager existence on wind-swept rock, but only with the help of this bird, the Clark's nutcracker. Though the whitebark is a strong tree, it cannot reproduce itself without the help of the nutcracker. And in a marvelous symbiotic relationship, the nutcracker cannot raise its young without the nutritious seeds of the pine. Join me as we learn about this partnership and about all the other creatures which rely on the whitebark. Most of us have never seen a whitebark pine. At elevations above 5,000 feet, they remain hidden in the remote northern Rockies. Having little commercial value, they've never even been studied much. Unlike most other trees, the whitebark has seeds which lack a membrane wing that grants mobility to escape and reproduce on their own. The whitebark is distinguished by its clusters of 5 needles. Unlike its white pine cousins, only the whitebark needs the help of the Clark's nutcracker to reproduce. Ripened pine seeds are the nutcracker's primary food. Some are eaten on the spot, but most are popped into an expandable pouch below the bird's tongue. Seeds are then cached. They'll be retrieved in the winter or next spring. An industrious nutcracker may transport and plant 30,000 whitebark seeds in one season. As autumn advances, competition is keen for the tasty pine nut. A nuthatch hides some in the crevice of a branch. Its stashing, however, does not go unnoticed. Smaller than the eastern chipmunk, the western least chipmunk vies for the nutritious crop. Although the martin prefers meat, it also can't resist whitebark seeds. Even the snags and hollow logs of dead whitebarks play a role. They provide protection for the red squirrel's midden. Middens are stored food caches that can reach large proportions, building up over several squirrel generations. They often contain a maze of tunnels, extending far below the surface. A key character in whitebark country, the red squirrel competes with the nutcracker. In fact, it's so closely associated with evergreen forests that it's often called pine squirrel. Likewise, the martin is sometimes known as pine martin. Although it steals seeds from the squirrel's cache, the martin would prefer to eat the squirrel itself. In nature's efficient system, nothing goes to waste. The damp midden keeps seeds secure within the cone for long periods. They can be devoured later at leisure, but there's little time to rest, especially when a hungry martin enters the squirrel's territory. the marten picks up the squirrel's scent. A major concern for all would-be seed eaters is the sticky sap covering the cone, which is potentially deadly if it gets on fur or feathers. Yet another creature enters the whitebark grove. By late September, the mighty grizzly bear is feeding in earnest, constantly foraging to build a thick layer of fat. Grizzlies are the ultimate predators, but their diet is omnivorous, and they eat vegetation more often than flesh. The average grizzly weighs around 500 pounds, but some reach 1,000 pounds or more. They can put on 200 pounds in a plentiful foraging season. Bears are very short-sighted and must rely on their keen sense of smell. This female grizzly is searching for a squirrel's midden full of rich pine seeds. The bear picks up the scent of the cache. Just before going into hibernation, the grizzly's diet is especially dependent upon the calorie-packed seeds of the whitebark. They are also laden with estrogen. For centuries, Native Americans consumed them as a means of birth control. The grizzly's powerful front claws can break open the tight pine cones if there aren't enough shelled seeds available. Ever the forest sentinel, the noisy squirrel's chatter will often signal to a bear that a pine cone midden is nearby. Bears mate in July, but the fertilized egg does not begin to grow in utero until the female enters her den in November. A large reserve of fat is needed to see her and her cubs through until spring. Given enough pine seeds in fall, the grizzly emerges healthier in spring. Without this rich food source, grizzlies may be forced to encroach on human populations. The squirrel can only wait until the bear's had her fill. Thanks to the busy squirrel's storage effort and the whitebark seeds, grizzlies can thrive in our high country. Each autumn, the Clark's nutcracker plays the key role in reforesting whitebark. Its sublingual pouch is filled with up to 100 seeds before the bird flaps away to an open area. An unwitting conservationist, it buries up to 15 seeds in each hole careful to cover them afterward. With an uncanny sense of finding the stashes, the nutcracker may dine on the cached seeds throughout the winter. Long, harsh winters curtail the whitebark's growth. A limb the size of a straw can represent 50 years of struggle. Living 200 to 1,000 years, whitebarks will grow 100 feet tall in a valley forest, or remain a gnarled shrub whipped by fierce subalpine winds. When there's an ample supply of whitebark cones, there's no need for the Clark's nutcracker to migrate. Much of their diet comes from whitebark seeds. Some 20,000 pine seeds are needed per nutcracker to live through the winter. And if the nutcracker breeds, an additional 5,000 seeds are needed for each offspring. Porcupine also feed on whitebark. Their razor-sharp teeth chisel away the outer bark, or phloem. If a porcupine totally severs the phloem, the tree will die. Whitebarks represent about 15% of the trees in the forests where they're found. Not only crucial to the food chain, they're important in preventing erosion on steep terrain. Life is a daily struggle in the frozen whiteness. In desperation, the snowshoe hare may eat the bark, but it prefers the whitebark's needles and buds. Shyest of all hares, it rests by day, patiently awaiting spring. Unable to relocate all the cached seeds, the bird leaves many to germinate and sprout. This assures whitebark reforestation and food for future nutcracker generations. Instinctively, it stores the seeds on south-facing or wind-swept slopes where winter first loosens its grip. There is just one nesting per year. Most of the birds mate for life. Male and female share incubation duties, typically sitting on 2 or 3 pale green eggs for about 18 days until they hatch. Both parents feed their fledglings whitebark seeds. Although the young leave the nest in about 4 weeks, the parents will continue to feed them for another 6 weeks, until early summer. Today's whitebark stands were cached by previous nutcracker generations. A lack of resin accounts for the tree's flexibility and its name. Without the darkening resin, the bark remains white. As winter slowly gives way to spring, life takes on a new surge of energy. Hungrier than ever, the grizzly begins a summer of foraging that will cover a range of up to 150 square miles. The grizzly starts by digging for tubers and tender shoots. As the season progresses, other vegetation, insects, burrowing animals, decaying carcasses, and berries make up its diet. Whether hungry or just playful, the grizzly's tastes do include fresh squirrel. Ounce for ounce, the red squirrel must be the pluckiest species in the forest. Where food is concerned, grizzlies never forget and return year after year, always at the right time. Unlike black bears, grizzlies do not climb trees. Their food supply must be procured on the ground. Having lost out on a squirrel lunch, this bear must settle for finding grubs and ants in a rotten whitebark log. Springtime brings added responsibilities. In February, this female squirrel mated, and she has already given birth to a litter of young in a hollow whitebark. From her nest, an abandoned woodpecker hole, she can monitor intruders. Every forest creature becomes an invader of the feisty red squirrel's turf. Newborn are about 4 inches long, helpless and blind. 2 to 8 babies comprise a litter. The female is receptive to males for only 1 day during her breeding period in late winter. That is the only time she will allow a male in her several-acre territory. In about 10 days, the young grow fine hair, and by 20 days, They're well covered with brown fur. After 27 days, the baby squirrels open their eyes. Clumsy at first, they get busy learning the swift acrobatic maneuvers they'll need for survival. About 1/3 the size of an adult, these young squirrels are at their most vulnerable stage. Predators include hawks, foxes, and various weasels. They continue to nurse throughout much of the summer while learning the ways of the forest. At 8 weeks, the mother weans her litter by simply abandoning the nest. Usually nocturnal, a young porcupine steps shakily into the daylight. No threat to the squirrel, it cannot resist a closer look at this curious little creature. The squirrel's tail is essential for balance and also lessens the impact of landing and occasional falls. Flicking the tail shows anger or fear. To a curious young squirrel, a family of equally young weasels does not look threatening, but they will by summer's end. Also by summer's end, the mother squirrel will become very aggressive and will banish the noisy youngsters from her home territory. Once self-reliant, they'll learn to defend their own territories. Hardy as it may seem, whitebark populations are dropping dramatically. One major problem is our control of natural fires. Slow-growing whitebark weaken beneath a heavy forest canopy. Dense forests have allowed the mountain pine beetle to ascend to whitebark elevations. They can take over a weakened tree. These pitch eruptions are the whitebark's effort to expel the pest, and it might succeed, but more likely, the beetle will kill the tree. Also recently, there has been a high incidence of blister rust. Cone-bearing branches are often first affected. Blister rust on a tree trunk is followed by a yellowing of the needles. A sapling may not survive the rapidly spreading fungus. we are finally coming to realize that these high mountain ecosystems are a sacred part of our national heritage. It's hard to imagine a tree as an endangered species. Unfortunately, this is the case with the whitebark pine. Like any animal, a tree is a living, breathing life form which needs to mate, reproduce, and eat to survive. The threat to its existence from disease, fire suppression, and certain forestry practices is very real. Yet we have the knowledge to diminish these dangers. It's essential to an entire ecosystem that we act now to protect this unique survivor. In so doing, we will ensure continuation of a natural cycle which benefits us, as well as the ancient whitebark. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. Which of our states has the prettiest women, the toughest cowboys, and the widest wide open spaces? Opinions may differ, but not among Texans. Almost any resident of the Lone Star State would claim that Texas has the largest and best of just about everything, including storytellers. Be that as it may, Texas is the largest of the nation's lower 48 states. And it does have our greatest variety of wildlife habitat, from the desert mountains of West Texas to the pine forests in the east, and from the flat plains of the northern panhandle to the marshlands of the Gulf Coast. This amazing diversity of landscape can be divided into 6 major areas: desert, hill country, brush country, open country, forest, and swamp. We all know Texas as the home of the armadillo, but many other kinds of wild creatures can also be found here. Some as common as the chipmunk, others as rare as the golden-cheeked warbler. Y'all come along now, and we'll explore wild Texas. Some of the most spectacular scenery in the state is found near the western boundary of Texas, in the dry desert mountains near the Rio Grande River. Big Bend National Park protects a number of endangered plants and animals. Among them is the colorful Texas madrone, a beautiful tree whose seedlings no longer survive in the wild. The once abundant white-winged dove finds refuge in the park, while its statewide population dwindles each year. The mountains of the Trans-Pecos Desert are dry, but the canyon bottoms are lush with life, fed by streams and springs. The barn swallow feeds on a plentiful supply of insects and finds mud with which to build a nest high up under a nearby canyon rim. One of the most striking natives of this region is the gray-banded, or Blair's, kingsnake. It has a habit of constricting and devouring rattlesnakes, to whose venom it's immune. But to humans, this snake is as harmless as it is handsome. The king snakes come together to mate in early spring, when the desert air is sweet with the fragrance of blooming flowers. North of Big Bend, Guadalupe Mountains National Park includes towering El Capitan, and behind it, Guadalupe Peak, the highest point in Texas. The remote Guadalupes are a refuge for some of the wildest animals in Texas, animals who will disappear before they ever learn to live with man. Black bears and bobcats, as well as cougars, are found here. But the cougar is one of the most elusive of all wild animals and is rarely seen. Seeps and springs dot this dry area, making it the ideal place to raise a litter, since the mother does not have to go far to hunt. And for the kittens, it's a natural playground. The mother cougar has little trouble finding a secure and roomy den. The Guadalupes are made of limestone, which readily forms caves. Such caves are another reason why the Guadalupes are an ideal habitat for this great cat. Another creature that makes good use of caves is the Mexican free-tailed bat. 4 caves in Texas are known for their huge bat populations. Split by the magnificent gorge of Palo Duro Canyon, the flat, open country of the Texas Panhandle is not entirely flat. But it is open, and it supports its own unique blend of wildlife. The striped skunk is a common resident. Less common is the swift fox, a small, shy canid that lives on insects, scorpions, lizards, and especially rodents. As fast and agile as its name implies, the swift fox is ideally suited to hunt the plains and canyons of open country. It has no enemies but man, for few creatures can outrun it. The skunk, too, has few enemies, but for a different reason. It's interesting to me that not just humans, but almost all animals are repelled by the smell of a skunk. Many animals feed at night, and like these bats, return at dawn to their daytime hiding places. The skies of open country are as important to wildlife as the land. On the Staked Plains are 2 national wildlife refuges, both havens for migrating waterfowl. In winter, the refuge at Muleshoe attracts the country's largest concentration of sandhill cranes, sometimes 100,000 of them. The canyons and gullies of open country shelter another unusual creature, the reclusive ringtail. The coyote is primarily a scavenger that will eat almost anything, but it's also a clever hunter with a keen nose. It seems impossible that any creature could survive such treatment, but the ringtail is a fighter. Even so, escape is another matter. As small as it is, the ringtail still has sharp little teeth. And as tough as it is, the coyote still has a tender nose. By now it's obvious that the ringtail is not going to be the coyote's next meal. The coyote leaves to hunt easier prey. Its normal diet is smaller mammals and rodents. Safe for now, the ringtail stays close to its den. In spite of this close call, a ringtail can usually find secure shelter in these rocky outcroppings. In central Texas, the hill country of the Edwards Plateau is swept by breezes and softened by cedars. The increasingly rare golden-cheeked warbler is said to nest nowhere else in the world but here. This specialized bird builds its nest of cedar bark. As land is cleared for grazing, the warbler simply disappears. Hill country sparkles with some of the clearest waters in the nation. These streams and springs are sometimes the only habitat of specially evolved fishes. Many clear, warm water springs in this area provide recreational spots for humans. As long as they remain free-flowing and unpolluted, such springs can be shared by wildlife and humans alike. Hill country contains many outcroppings of colorful granite, of which the best known is the Pink Dome of Enchanted Rock. This pink granite was used for the Texas state capitol at Austin, by far the largest state capitol building in the country. Between the open prairie and the eastern forest lies an unusual area called the Cross Timbers. Grassland has replaced much of what used to be long fingers of forest, reaching north-south into the prairie. Once, the cross timbers were the haunt of deer, black bear, and wild hogs. Now, only birds and small mammals remain. The trees in the cross timbers provide nesting places for many types of birds, while the interspersed grasslands offer a rich diet of insect life. As its name implies, the scissor-tailed flycatcher's primary diet is insects. The female seems to be having trouble, though, convincing her babies that mulberries are also a suitable food. Meanwhile, the male continues to hunt in the fields nearby for their standard fare. With its long, elegantly forked tail, the flycatcher is the ultimate in grace on the wing. The tail opens in flight like a pair of scissors, providing perfect balance in motion. Both male and female take turns feeding the young, folding their tails as they perch at the nest. During courtship, the male performs a breathtaking sky dance, tumbling and somersaulting from 100 feet in the air. With young already in the nest, their dance is more subdued, yet still an aerial ballet. "200 years ago, a squirrel could have traveled all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the forests of East Texas without ever touching the ground. In Mississippi and Alabama, much of that original forest is gone. But in the big thicket and the piney woods of East Texas, wildlife still interacts in timeless ways. The fox squirrel shares this area of oak hickory habitat with a colony of honeybees. The forest floor is home for another small mammal, the eastern cottontail rabbit. Though these two animals are similar in size, they do not compete. The cottontail eats primarily green vegetation, while the fox squirrel comes to the ground to search for nuts. Much of this pine and hardwood forest is now grown for harvest, but in some areas, old growth is preserved. The combination of old and new forest land ensures habitat for the great variety of plants and animals essential to any healthy ecosystem. East Texas is as wet as West Texas is dry. Toward the Gulf Coast, forest gives way to cypress swamp. The armadillo's expanding range includes most of Texas, but it thrives especially well in these wetlands. The odd-looking armadillo is a master of survival. Its flesh is tender and tasty, but its tough, leathery shell proves impenetrable, even to the powerful jaws of this young cougar. The brush country on the Rio Grande Plain of South Texas is dense with shrubs as tall as trees. This area provides good cover for many unusual birds. Among them is the chachalaca, a noisy, gregarious bird common at the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge. Other colorful residents of brush country include the Altamira oriole and the brilliant green jay. The pyrrholoxia, or gray cardinal, is partial to mesquite thickets. It crushes the mesquite pods to feed on the seeds. Buffered by outlying islands, Texas has one of the most extensive seacoasts of any state. Padre Island is an ideal place to watch seabirds of all kinds. Gulls wheel and dive. A black skimmer shadows the waves for fish. A sandpiper pokes along the beach. Life on the margin of the sea is endlessly interesting. But then, each habitat has its own special way of attracting us. From seashore to desert, from mountains to marshland, the grandeur of the Lone Star State is in the diversity of its wild creatures and wild places. Skyscrapers, parking lots, and shopping malls. Man-made America looks pretty much the same in Dallas as it does in Seattle or Baltimore. What makes each state unique is its climate and natural resources, its land forms, its wildlife. The beauty of a place is certainly what makes people want to live there, and usually what makes them come to visit. Texans are proud of their state, the oil rigs, the Alamo, the Astrodome. But taking pride in landmarks is not as important as taking pride in the land itself. Oil and gas will not last forever, but wildlife and unspoiled habitat can. Let's keep working to preserve wild Texas. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. In my opinion, the lynx is the most beautiful of North America's wild cats. It's also one of Mother Nature's living mysteries. Although we're only starting to unravel the hows and whys of its life story, we do know where this elusive feline lives. It's here that our story begins. Duluth, Minnesota, a thriving metropolis in a land of lakes. Above it, Superior National Forest, gateway to the great North Woods. This vast boreal forest stretches from the rocky coast of Maine to the Rocky Mountains of the West. The lynx once roamed these woods. It continues to live throughout most of Canada, but not many areas below the border can boast of lynx. Urbanization and overtrapping are to blame. Its fortune is linked to that of the snowshoe hare. Every 10 years or so, the populations of both predator and prey rise and fall almost in unison. Let's find out more about this mystery. Join me on a journey to where the winter wind blows cold and the snow falls deep, to the wild realm of the North Woods lynx. The boreal forest, black spruce, white birch, gray winters. Of all the wild cats, the lynx alone has adapted to make its living in these northernmost woodlands. Equally well equipped for life here is the snowshoe hare, with its soft, snow-white coat and wide fur-covered feet. The lynx stalks its quarry. The hungry and the hunted. An age-old relationship. Both animals have trained their entire lives for these few minutes. This is their Olympics. This moment marks the supreme effort of their existence. They're not enemies, but rather they're united in a bond that is as essential and eternal as any on earth. We humans hate to see a cute little bunny caught and killed. But the snowshoe hare is not as helpless as it might appear. Although prey is often hard to catch, some lynx will manage to survive long enough to reproduce. Nature has timed their breeding season for late winter. The adult male and female, on their own for most of the year, now come together to make new life. Courtship is a relatively noisy affair for the normally quiet cats. First, they get to know one another. Then the slightly larger male on the left calls and presents his head to the female. As she comes more into heat, she starts to return the male's attention. Once she's ready, the pair will mate several times over the course of a few days. In a gesture common to the cat family, the tom bites the back of the female's neck during copulation. After mating, he will leave her in search of other females and will never know the kittens that are born 2 months later. In spring, the female gave birth to 2 tiny kittens in her den under a hollow log. 2 months later, summer finds them sampling some of their first solid food, a ruffed grouse that their mother has delivered to the den entrance. By autumn, the kittens are ready for some important play hunting on their own. Mother watches from the den, sensing that they're old enough for this independent outing. Curious as all good cats should be, the kittens come across some other creatures of the North Woods. A badger, digging in for winter. And a white-tailed deer. It might have to run for its life if the kittens were older or hungrier. In an area rich in prey, a single lynx will restrict its hunting to about 1 square mile. When prey is scarce, they must travel farther. winter. The family is still together now, but will probably separate before next spring. The snowshoe hare population has plummeted to the bottom of its 10-year cycle. Now, there is only one hare for every 12 acres. At the peak, there could be nearly 100 times more, as many as 8 for every 1 acre. Because the hares have exhausted their winter food supply, the lynx, in turn, face possible starvation. Her family will not eat tonight. Winter wears on, with fewer and fewer hares to be found. The family is still a group, but is becoming more loosely knit as time passes. One kitten stays with the female, while the other wanders off on its own. It looks as if the mother and her other kitten are playing, but their play could turn to aggression if they don't find food soon. The mother lynx trained her young to hunt. Now, it's Mother Nature who holds all of their lives in her hands. The chase you saw a little while ago was filmed in slow motion. This one is filmed in regular speed. Watch how fast the lynx and hare actually run. You'll barely be able to see what's happening. Finally, the mother makes a catch. It's odd to me that some people can think of predators as guilty killers and of their prey as innocent victims. Truth is, the first year of life is hard for hunter and hunted alike. This is when many predators die, killed by others, or when they simply don't find food. Not many lynx kittens will live through this season's famine. The mother does not share this meal with her hungry kittens. Maybe she's making the point that her young need to hunt for themselves. More likely, her possessiveness stems from a deep and primary law of nature, species survival. No matter how hard it gets, she will survive to mate and conceive again. It seems cruel, but nature is only concerned with preserving the species. On its own now, one of the young lynx makes a desperate attempt at the only other prey that's still available, ruffed grouse. Near the end of this long, brutal winter, I'm not surprised to discover one of the kittens, dead of starvation. I am saddened, though. This animal is one of nature's finest achievements. Its stiff ear tufts function like antennae. Its 4 canines are strong and sharp. Its huge feet keep it afloat, even in the softest snow. Its claws are retractable. But I can feel the starved body under its still beautiful fur. This wild cat evolved for survival. Still, just as the snowshoe hare lives and dies, so must the lynx. And the interwoven pattern of their living and dying is as ancient as these northern forests. You know, I always thought that men bought fur coats for women. Call me a male chauvinist, but that's just the way I thought it was. Statistics now show that more and more women are buying fur coats for themselves. And a lot of those coats are lynx. If you're thinking of buying a lynx coat, please don't. I'll be the first to admit that their fur is beautiful. But don't you really think it looks better on them? There are dozens of non-fur alternatives. But if you must choose to wear fur, please select that of a ranch-raised animal, such as mink, raccoon, or fox, and not that of a wild trapped animal that's seriously declining in numbers. Let's leave the lynx skins on their original owners. They wear them with more natural elegance than any human ever could. Do your part to preserve them, so that future generations can also enjoy this living mystery, the Northwoods lynx. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until next time, enjoy our wild America. I'm Marty Stouffer. The wild turkey is one of our most American birds, though it mistakenly bears the name of a foreign country. It was common enough and so highly thought of that Benjamin Franklin wanted it proclaimed our national emblem. It nearly defeated the bald eagle in a vote by Congress. But the bird the Pilgrims served as their main course in 1621 had vanished from Massachusetts by the mid-1800s. Overshooting, the clearing of its woodland habitat, and the loss of a staple food to chestnut blight made this largest of North American game birds one of the rarest. Today, the wild turkey has made a comeback. It's found in every state except Alaska. But what do we really know about our familiar Thanksgiving symbol? Let's take a look at this strong flyer, which prefers to run. This shy and wary bird with its flamboyant courtship ritual. Let's get more acquainted with the wild turkey. It's springtime, here in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. This oak hickory forest, with an understory of dogwood and redbud, is perfect wild turkey habitat. The lengthening days signal the start of one of the most colorful courtship rituals in nature. The females, the hens, watch as the males, called gobblers or toms, begin to parade. We'll return to these wild birds. First, let's visit a farm down in the valley. Let's compare the wild turkey to the turkey we already know. The domestic turkey gobbles all year long, rather than just in spring. Its head and neck are more covered with carunculated skin. The snood, which hangs over its bill, is much longer. It has a smaller brain and can only survive in captivity. Wild turkeys are large. Gobblers average 17 pounds, hens about 10. But domestic turkeys are huge. A gobbler can weigh up to 50 pounds. All turkeys started out brown, but in recent years, selective breeding has created the domestic white turkey, the bird we put on our Thanksgiving table today. The turkey is the most important domestic livestock developed in North America. But our story is about a bird of a different feather. The wild turkey. It's far more alert. Its neck and legs are longer, and its body more streamlined. Adult males have a beard. The beard grows 4 to 5 inches a year and is up to a foot long on 3-year-old gobblers. But because it only gets so long, it's not an accurate measure of age. It might look like hair, but the beard is a tuft of modified feathers. This hen has a beard, but only about 1 in 20 hens have one. These are eastern wild turkeys, the bird the Pilgrims served at the first Thanksgiving. The toms and hens spend most of the year apart and use a variety of vocalizations to locate one another for mating season. A gobble can be heard up to a mile away, but other calls can only be heard a few feet. This is a pulmonic puff. It's similar to sounds made by smaller cousins, the grouse. A receptive hen crouches to be bred, and a gobbler climbs on the hen's back to fertilize her. But the dominant gobbler insists on his right to do all the mating. These yearling males, called jakes, are usually chased away by the toms. But the yearling hens, called jennies, join in the breeding. The eastern wild turkey is one of the 6 subspecies which have developed as a result of varied habitats. Since 2 types are only found in Mexico, we'll be concentrating on the 4 types native to the U.S. The eastern, Florida, Rio Grande, and Merriam's. The eastern wild turkey is the most widespread. It lives throughout the entire eastern half of America. When the hens go off to lay an egg in their nest or to forage, the toms follow. The Florida wild turkey lives only in the Everglades state. It's the smallest of the four types. Except for size, it differs little from its cousin, the eastern wild turkey, which also has tail feathers dipped in chestnut brown or buff. Every flock has a dominant gobbler. The spurs on his lower legs indicate his age more accurately than does his beard. The spurs grow about ½ an inch a year. They also go from rounded at 1 year, to blunt at 2 years, to sharp at 3 years, to very sharp at older than 3 years. Nearly all turkeys live and die within 5 miles of where they hatched. But a foraging flock may wander widely. They feed in the early morning, rest, and sometimes take a roll in the dust in midday. Then they forage again until roosting time at sunset. The wild turkey is most often found in hardwood forest habitat, with grassy openings and plenty of oaks to supply acorns. However, the bird has adapted to a wide variety of habitats, ranging from wooded swampland to arid grassland, like here in western Oklahoma. The Rio Grande turkey lives from northern Mexico up through Texas and Oklahoma. Shorter legs and a cream-colored tail tip distinguish it. The Rio Grande is closely related to the South Mexican turkey, which was domesticated by the Aztecs about 2,000 years ago. The Indians hunted with arrows that had feathers made from turkey quills and points made from turkey spurs. Apparently, they got tired of chasing the wild birds and began to raise them in captivity. The Spanish conquistadors took the turkey home with them in 1500. It became a delicacy, spread across Europe, and reached the table of King Henry VIII. It was mistaken for the African guinea fowl, which had been imported from the Turkish Empire. So, for a while, both birds were called turkey fowl. English settlers brought the domesticated version back to this continent. And so, our most American bird bears the name of a foreign country. Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona are home to the Merriam's turkey. Of our 4 turkey types, it has the whitest rump and tail tips, and thus looks most like the domestic turkey. Cougars are only one of the turkey's predators. It's also hunted by hawks, owls, eagles, foxes, bobcats, and coyotes. To protect all that delicious breast meat, turkeys have excellent hearing and eyesight. They're the wariest of all game birds. And though large, they're not easy to catch. The turkey can take off quickly and fly up to 50 miles an hour for a short distance. Like all four types, these Merriams remain constantly alert. As many wild turkeys as we have today, we once had even more. When Europeans first arrived in America, there were an estimated 10 million wild turkeys. The bird immediately became an important food source for the settlers. This led to exploitation. As hunting continued relentlessly, these biologists, with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, are building a blind as the first step toward capturing and transplanting turkeys. In 1937, Congress established a fund for national wildlife restoration, and wildlife agencies began widespread research programs. After years of trial and error, the turning point came with the idea of transplanting wild stock to restore turkey populations. But trapping the cautious birds was difficult. The use of a cannon net, powered by rockets or mortars, was a major breakthrough in solving this problem. Turkeys are baited with corn right up to the hidden net. While teammates run to get the truck loaded with crates, one biologist calms the birds. Untangling feet and feathers is no easy task.
How's it look, Don? Let's get them in here, everybody's hot.
The birds are upset, but unhurt.
I come in pretty early in the morning.
The amazing adaptability of the turkey is what makes transplanting so successful. Also aided by hunting restrictions, America's wild turkey population has increased from a low of 20,000 to over 2 million. That's 10,000% in the last half century. It now lives in every state but Alaska. This hen, being banded before release in a new area, is part of an effort that is one of the greatest success stories in wildlife management history. Some early restocking involved crossing domestic turkeys with wild birds. It spread disease and may have polluted gene pools. Still, many a domestic turkey has been released intentionally to breed with wild ones. And some wild blood has been used to produce the so-called game farm bird, a crossbreed. Though it may resemble its wild kin, it has a larger body, a white rump and tail tip, and shorter legs. Its head is smaller, with a less pronounced dewlap and far fewer caruncles than the domestic turkey. But the game farm bird is not much better at surviving in the wild than is its plump domestic cousin. The real wild turkey is a far more graceful creature than either the barnyard or game farm breeds. Life in the wild keeps it more alert. Yet they can all interbreed because there is only one species of turkey, which includes all wild and domestic types. The wild turkey can live for 12 years if it avoids hunters and predators and if it can find food. Acorns are its main diet. A large gobbler may eat a pound of food a day. This is the feeding call. It's not used to call each other to food, but rather to keep the flock properly spaced. They pluck grasses and grapes, catch grasshoppers and beetles, and scratch for seeds and tubers. Their diet is so varied, it's almost easier to say what they don't eat. The squirrel is one of the main competitors for acorns, but turkeys will often find and steal their cache. The red-headed woodpecker has a better plan. It hides an acorn off the ground in a tree crevice. Another acorn eater is the tufted titmouse, and the chipmunk can carry off a dozen at a time in its cheek pouches. In springtime, the only thing more important than food is mating. The long center tail feathers identify this jake, and jakes do join in the fighting, especially when hens are near. But a jake will usually not fight a gobbler. A tom with a beard approaches the beardless jake. The jake meets the challenge. Anything can happen in nature. In a reversal of the established social order, the jake drives the gobbler away from the hens. During the last hour before sundown, a turkey flock finishes feeding and searches out a roost for the night. After flying up, they change limbs several times, then settle down and preen. Turkeys roost together for safety. Also for safety, they usually change perches nightly, but they may return to the same tree if other good sites are not available. There's much more to be learned about our largest upland game bird. Next time, we'll continue to study the wild turkey. I'm Marty Stouffer. Until then, enjoy our wild America.